For many people, including myself, the draft is the absolute best part of franchise mode, and so it's important to get the most of the draft experience. And in Madden 25, that includes getting those draft class settings right in terms of how strong or weak you want your class to be. Those sliders were introduced in Madden 24 and they're back for Madden 25. And much like I did in the last game, I have done a ton of research to try to find the best balance of being able to get good players in your franchise without the draft being overpowered. Now, if you came to this video and the only thing you care about is what I recommend for draft class strength sliders, I'll show you them right here. This is what I would recommend based on the work that I have done for your draft classes. I think running backs were a little bit too strong, as were interior defensive line, linebackers, and corners. I've knocked all those down to weak. I haven't put anything up to strong. I think there are a couple of positions where it's kind of on the borderline. You could go one of two ways, and I will talk about those here in just a moment. Worth noting that when this feature came out in Madden 24, it was not available on the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, only on the current gen consoles. So if you're playing Madden 25 and you're not seeing the ability to edit your draft class sliders, they should be here. Edit draft class strength in your franchise settings. If you're not seeing that, it's because it's not available to you because you're likely on the last gen console. But how did I come up with these recommended sliders? What was the work done to come up to this conclusion? That's what we're going to be talking about here for the rest of this video. Now, much like I did last year, what I did was I generated 10 draft classes for every strength, for every position, except for this year. Unlike last year, I did not do very strong. I just feel like very strong is only an option if you're trying to create super powerful classes and have a league full of 90 overalls across the board. And if that's what you want, that's great. And you already know that very strong is probably the draft class strength for you. But I feel like most players will be somewhere between strong and very weak. And I want to show you the data here. I also want to give you view access to this Google spreadsheet, which will be in the description of this video, so that you can look through the data yourself and come to your own conclusions. We're going to go position by position here, and here's what I saw. Again, this is a 10 draft class sample size across all 4 of these strengths. So it's very possible that it's not super representative of what will be the case over, a larger sample size of 100 plus draft classes. I just, on my own accord, can't do 100 draft classes on my own. So here's what we found here for the quarterback position. For very weak and for weak, you're only going to get like one quarterback that's above a 70 overall per draft class. A little bit more than that, but a lot of these classes had one. I even had a couple that didn't have any quarterbacks in the 70s for both very weak and weak. And then with very weak, you're not even going to get a very high chance of hidden developments. In 10 draft classes, there were 7 total players who had above normal. Now, I will say for the depth traits, I only looked at the first 3 rounds. That's what that F3R means right there. For overall, it was throughout the entire board, including UDFAs. Once you get to weak, you get a little bit higher of a chance to get hidden development, but a lot of it's going to be star. You're not really going to get the superstar abilities very often, but that could be something I could see people wanting. How many good quarterbacks actually come out of the draft every year in real life? Oftentimes you get one good player, right? And so this could be maybe a little bit more representative of real life. I like to go with normal though. You jump up to 1.8, which I still feel like isn't overpowered. You do get a higher hidden development chance. One thing I do think is viable if you want to go weak until you yourself draft a quarterback and then help the CP out a bit by bumping it up to normal, or perhaps even strong. I do feel like strong is a little bit too much. You don't want, I think, 4.5 good quarterbacks coming into the league every year. I don't think that's too realistic. realistic. Moving over to the running back position, where I recommended the weak side of things. Very weak. You're only going to get about 4.2 good running backs, and you're going to have a below 50% chance of hidden development. That jumps up to 6, which I feel like is a pretty good number for running backs that come into the league every year that are good. Could be a little bit low. I could certainly see if more people like normal here. Above a 50% hidden development chance. That's kind of where I like it to be. I like it to be somewhere around the 50s. I just felt like an 83% chance of hidden development. Again, small sample size here, so this could be way higher than it would be long term. So I do think normal's super viable, as well as weak for running backs. I'm going to be trying out weak though. There's not a lot of draft classes that come out with these super strong running back classes anymore. So I feel like 6 with a above 50% chance is pretty good. Wide receiver. Now this one, I think I ended up suggesting normal, but I think you could easily go with weak here again. For very weak, I just saw a 12% hidden development chance, which just is a little bit too low for me. 25.69 is also really low, but you do get over 9 receivers that are above 70 overall per class, which I feel like kind of balances it out. I think wide receivers especially, it's not super hard to get their development trade up. So hidden at 25.69 is certainly low. It's even below 50% at normal. So I can see a case where, and I did end up going with normal, but I can see where weak, kind of that 9.2 is a good mark, but it was really the hidden development chance that made me recommend normal. And then even strong honestly isn't awful. I think it's a little bit too much, but this is one of the positions where I feel like strong is more viable than others. There are some positions where strong is just insane. For tight ends, I ended up recommending normal. This is the one that I was probably closest to recommending strong, just because an average of 5.470 pluses isn't too much, and 73.91 hidden development is high, but it's not insane. Ultimately, I think normal is right in the sweet spot though. These are kind of the numbers I feel like you should see from tight end. You don't get a ton of really good tight ends coming into the league every year. I know last year's class with guys like Laporta and McBride and Kincaid was really good, and we saw early contributors, but that's kind of a rarity. And so I think somewhere around 4, again, above a 50% chance, but not, it doesn't feel like you're almost guaranteed to get a hidden development in the first 3 rounds. That's kind of where I wanted to be. I think normal is the perfect spot for tight ends. Let's move to the offensive line, where we will start with the tackle spots. And I went with normal development here too, and it's ultimately just because I think 3.7 tackles is too few tackles to be over 70 overall. I think the hidden development chance is pretty solid here, although with it being so hard to upgrade development in the game, I am a little bit more fine. I don't see it as much of a problem to have a high hidden development chance than other positions with your offensive line. So I think 9 tackles, maybe a little bit high. The jump from 3.7 to 9.2. I'd love to get somewhere around 7 if it was me, and then somewhere maybe in the 70s for hidden development. So I think normal is really good there. Interior offensive line, again, I like the hidden development chance here, but for weak, there's just not enough offensive linemen generating that are over 70 overall. The 89% hidden is really, really, really high, and even the 9.1 average. So I really wish there was something in the middle between these two, but ultimately, because offensive line is hard to develop, I'd rather take a class that maybe is a little bit too good than a strength that is going to make it even harder for you to build a good offensive line than it already is in the game. Defensive end. Defensive end is another one where if you want to go strong, I can't blame you. A 63% hidden percent chance is right where I think it should be. 14 is a little bit high. Ultimately, you're still above 50% here with about 8 defensive ends generating over 70 overall per year, which I think is a good number here. Weak is just a little bit too weak for me. A 30% hidden development chance is just not tenable. Now, for defensive tackle, I ended up going with weak over normal. Normal is pretty good. These numbers are fine. I just feel like defensive tackle classes usually aren't super strong. So if you're looking to replicate real life a little bit more. I do like weak. 43.48 is a little low, but it's higher than other positions that I saw at weak. And I think around 5 defensive tackles that are generating over 70 overall is a really good number. You just have a little bit more of the hidden development chance than you'd like. But ultimately, I think both of these are really viable options. I'm just going to try out weak personally to replicate the fact that in the NFL, there often aren't super strong defensive tackle classes. So, linebacker. This is a really interesting position. When you go at normal draft class quality for linebacker, you get 13 linebackers generated at 70 plus overall, which is a lot. Now, the linebacker takes up a lot of positions, so I could certainly see why you go with normal. I think like this is such a massive jump from 5 to 13. This is another one where we need something right down the middle. So if you want to go maybe a little bit more than should be generated, I understand, especially because the hidden development chance is kind of low at linebacker. It's especially low at weak. But ultimately, I think 13 linebackers per draft being generated over 70 overall is just too many. I don't like to see really anything in the double digits if I can help it. You're going to get a lot of normal development, but kind of like receiver, I feel like linebackers can get development upgrades fairly easy in this game. Not maybe as easy as a wide receiver, but it's up there for, I think, the easiest positions to get development upgrade. They just have to have really good tackle seasons or sack seasons, depending on if they're inside linebackers or edge players. Much like last year, the cornerback position is still far too powerful in my mind on the normal draft class strength. And if there's one position that you put at weak, I would say it's corner. There's even a chance you could go very weak here if you're looking for a challenge. But even at weak, you're getting above a 50% hidden development trait and 8 corners at 70 plus overall. Those are really good numbers. You actually dip below 50%. That's probably just small sample size bias. I'm sure it would be better than that. But even on strong, I only saw a 52% hidden development. So they give really high overall corners, but they don't have good dev. It's kind of weird. The last couple of years, it's kind of been the case with corner in this game. Ultimately, I'll take the 8 corners roughly that are being generated above 70 overall, with honestly a similar hidden development chance. It looks like pretty much no matter what you choose between weak and strong. And I think 8 is the best number of those 3. Now at safety, we're going to stick with normal development here. I think weak is just too few safeties. Now, it could replicate real life. There's not a lot of strong safety classes in recent memory. So if you're looking to replicate real life football, weak would even be, I think, super viable for safety. But just 3.2 is a little bit too few for my liking. I do think having good safeties makes for playing defense a little bit more fun. So I want to have a better chance of actually getting safeties in. 9.8 is a little high though. You're seeing a massive difference with several positions. We've highlighted it here between weak and normal. Ultimately, I mean, even the hidden development chance from 26 to 67, I'm sure with a bigger sample size, it wouldn't be quite as massive of a gap on the hidden development, but we're seeing a lot of positions with massive gaps here in the 70 plus overall range. So I'm thinking that some of these numbers would hold up given a larger sample size. Maybe not exactly, this big of a difference, but they would be pretty big. So there you have it. Again, didn't do very strong this year because I feel like there's only a certain type of franchise where very strong will be viable, and those people who run those type of franchises probably already know that they want their draft class strength at very strong. So I gave you my recommendations, but really the purpose of me sharing this research with you is because the way you want to run your franchise is probably not the same way I want to run mine. And so take a look at these numbers, figure out what kind of range, what kind of hidden development chance you like, how many players you want at 70 plus overall, and I've even got the draft class total. So if you have your entire draft class at very weak, you're going to end up with about 41 total players above 70 overall and about a 28% hidden dev chance. So if you really like the challenge, that's the kind of stuff. In 10 draft classes, I saw 2 players being generated at 80. So it's not impossible to get really good players, but they're going to be pretty few and far between. And even all the way up to normal, I only saw 5 80 pluses. I feel like that's probably a little bit low for what you'll get over time. But at strong, it jumped all the way up to 54. So I wouldn't recommend strong at really any position probably. But if that's what you like to see more immediate impact players coming into your franchise, that's certainly going to be the case with the strong class. And then I have all positions broken down. You can sort by whatever strength you want, except for, of course, the very strong is not going to work this year. But I hope this video was informative and it helps you decide what kind of draft class strength you are looking for in your franchise. If you enjoyed the video, I would certainly appreciate a like and maybe even a comment about your thoughts about the draft class research that I have done for Madden 25. And that's all I've got for you. I'll be back soon with more Madden 25 content, and I'll see you then.